Godzilla from -1 was indeed a monster that people should dread. Unlike most other Godzillas, all this one wanted was destruction. And this nigh immortal and indestructible Godzilla almost laid waste to a city and had the potential to send a country into a nuclear winter. But how? Well, of course, it all boils down to his anatomy and physiology, which is what we will be discussing throughout the course of this video. From his appearance and nature of atomic breath to the nuclear contamination he can cause and his indestructibility, we will discuss everything and more. Let's get started. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This may be a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Who is Godzilla -1? So the Godzilla from -1 has been a bit of a mystery, but he is often described as a dinosaur-like creature in the movie. He first appeared in Odo Island folklore, but once he revealed his presence, he became the monster one should shudder at the thought. The locals would know he was around when heaps of dead deep-sea fish floated up, a result of them panicking and rushing to the surface whenever Godzilla steered, unable to handle the sudden pressure change. Now, this concept, that of an organism's body not being able to withstand sudden changes and the environmental pressure, was played heavily within -1, and we'll eventually see how. So, Godzilla's first major appearance happened in 1945. The year was the tail end of World War II. Godzilla decided to take a stroll in Odo Island and stumbled upon a Japanese military airbase. He was low-key until some dude shone a spotlight on him. Bad move, this riled him up, and he went on a rampage, using his jaws, legs, and tail to take out the military repairman. Only two guys, kamikaze pilot Koichi Shikishima and lead mechanic Suzaku Tachibana, lived to tell the tale. The government, however, hushed it up, blaming the American forces for the chaos. Clearly, the Japanese government wanted to keep Godzilla a secret. Shikishima was left shaken, haunted by the nightmares of Godzilla. The following year, Big G got caught up in America's atomic testing at Bikini Atoll, specifically during Operation Crossroads. The second test, called Baker, really did a number on him. It blasted him into a gigantic, superpowered version of himself. This is perfectly depicted in the Godzilla -1 novel, and matches the real Baker test footage too. Post-irradiation, Big G became huge and furious. He started by wrecking American ships as he headed towards Japan. Tensions with the Soviet Union were high, so the US military stepped back, leaving Japan to deal with Godzilla's wrath. That was Godzilla's story before he became the harbinger of death, destruction, and doom. But I mentioned that the nuclear tests transformed him and increased his size, which brings me to our next entry. How does Godzilla's initial theropod dinosaur-like appearance influence his physical capabilities and movement on land and in water? Initially, Godzilla has this theropod dinosaur look going on, kinda like the T-Rex. Think big head, hunched back, and walking on two legs, with toes like a bird. This design gave him a pretty intimidating silhouette, especially with those massive dorsal plates that started right near his neck. Now, Godzilla's face with its sizable snout really drives home that T-Rex influence. Plus, he's got these sharp scales lining his jaw and spiky bits on his elbows, so if it's fierce, you're talking about Godzilla has that covered. Post-irradiation, Godzilla kept some of his original features, but received a serious upgrade. His style now was a mix of the Heisei Godzilla and the Monsterverse look, a blend of old school and modern age Godzilla. The skin and dorsal fins were definitely straight out of the Monsterverse Godzilla fashion magazine for kaiju. Additionally, his dorsal fins got even edgier and now resembled the Mir Goji and Kiryu Goji designs, and his snout gets slimmer. The color scheme is a bit different too, with lighter brown accents and skin that looks like it's been through the ringer. Oh, and it now has what looks like radiation scars. How did radiation change Godzilla's size and powers? Now, like most Godzilla films and comics, he became a giant atomic breath-breathing lizard after getting subjected to radiations of H-bomb testing. That's exactly what happened to our guy in -1 as well. So Godzilla was already a powerhouse before getting zapped with radiation. In the Godzilla -1 novel, it said his regeneration helped him survive the Baker nuclear test, but his body was trying to heal and return to normal. But with all that radioactive stuff in the mix, things got a bit out of hand. Instead of just healing, he mutated into something even more monstrous. So yeah, Godzilla's healing is powerful, but it's got its quirks. The guy wreaked havoc on the Odo Island airbase like it was nothing. He bulldozed the watchtower just by slamming into it, and those poor soldiers didn't stand a chance. He crushed, bit, tossed, and tail-whipped them into oblivion. No sweat. However, after the radiation glow-up, Godzilla went from tough to mega tough. He got so big that he could pick up a train with his jaws as if it were a toy. A single step from him became a death sentence for anyone unfortunate enough to be underfoot. Even tall buildings and skyscrapers did not stand a chance. He could knock them over with just a flick of his massive tail. Godzilla wasn't just about brute force though. He showed some serious skills with his claws, like when he grabbed and punched into the cruiser Takao or shredded buildings during his Ginza rampage. Oh, and he could chuck boats and trains like they were baseballs. So basically, Big G's strength in -1 is off the charts, quite expectedly. And he gets his strength from his size, but for a creature of his size, he's got reflexes like a cat. He nearly brought down the Shinden, a jet that could hit 400 knots with just his jaws and hands. How does Godzilla's aggressive and territorial behavior impact his interactions with humans and the environment during Operation Wadatsumi? The giant lizard has always had a bit of a temper, but post-radiation, he cracked up to 11, or maybe even 11,000. Back in 45 in Odo Island, he went berserk after someone spotlighted him and then got even madder when shot at. The result was a rampage that left only 2 survivors, about whom we've already spoken. A year later, after he's had his nuclear bath, Godzilla's basically a no-go zone for humans. He's smashing any ship that dares come close as he heads to Japan. If we talk about Shinsei Maru, he chased it down like a cat after a laser pointer. The Takao was grabbed, torn it into pieces, then finished it off with his atomic breath. Once he hit Ginza, Godzilla's only focus was on destruction, relentless and unyielding destruction. Buildings, trains, people, nothing was safe. He even chomped down on a train and lifted it like it was nobody's business. And when the artillery started firing, he unleashed his atomic breath, which was called the heat ray in the movie. Now this turned everything into a wasteland. However, Dr. Noda was clever. He used Godzilla's rage against himself during Operation Wadatsumi. Shikishima played Matador by baiting Godzilla into Sagami Bay after he landed. They even tricked Godzilla into wasting his heat ray on some unmanned ships. Despite taking a beating from being forced underwater and then resurfacing, Godzilla was still all about that attack life. He was gearing up to fire his heat ray again when Shikishima's plane intervened and changed the trajectory of Godzilla's fate. Does Godzilla's atomic breath work like a nuclear bomb? Godzilla's atomic breath is his big, bad showstopper. Appearance-wise, it looks like a supercharged blue beam of atomic fury shooting out of his mouth. That's it, but the chaos it causes, that's another deal altogether. Before unleashing this beast, his dorsal fins do a little light show. They glow all blue from his tail up his back. His mouth leaks blue, ionized radiation, and even his eyes and neck get illuminated. Once the fins snap back, out comes the heat ray. Director Takashi Yamazaki likens this to how an atomic bomb goes off. It's like squeezing all this nuclear material into a tight spot until it can take no more and just explodes. And when this beam hits something, it's obviously game over. We're talking a massive explosion. Mushroom cloud that can be seen from miles away, a huge crater, the works. The shockwaves from this thing are another elegant mess. They flatten everything around. The heat ray is so intense it even chars Godzilla's face, meaning he's got to take a breather and heal up before going for round 2. In the heat department, the atomic breath totally and absolutely stands out. It's so hot, it can quite literally vaporize iron. If you watch the movie, the cruiser Takao was essentially zapped out of existence. After Godzilla used his atomic breath or heat ray to annihilate a bunch of tanks in Tokyo, the resulting carnage left most of Ginza was wiped off the map. In the Godzilla -1 novel, they say the heat ray turned the iron in the Takao and the buildings around the National Diet Building into vapor, and the shockwave from the blast in Ginza wrecked everything within a 6-kilometer radius. So yeah, it is safe to say that the atomic breath works more or less as a nuclear blast. It causes the same after effects too. It kills or sickens those exposed, contaminates the environment, and has long-term health consequences. Additionally, if Godzilla uses multiple of these in one place, it can lead to nuclear winter-like conditions, to say the least. What evidence of intelligence does Godzilla demonstrate throughout his interactions with humans and the environment? And how might this reflect his neural anatomy? Godzilla's not just a big guy with a mean streak, he's got some smarts too. However, some is the keyword here. Back in 45 at Odo Island, he was eyeballing the military guys, but only went on to attack when they started shooting. Post-nuclear makeover, Godzilla seems to have a bone to pick with humans. It's almost like he knows they're the ones who turned him into a nuclear giant, and now all he wants is to take down anything human-related, be it ships or cities. Additionally, he's tactical. Seeing he can't stomp on everyone running away, he gets creative and uses his tail to bring down a building, which causes way more chaos. Earlier, he was like a curious cat, albeit a violent one, with a train. He picked it up and shook it until everyone fell out, and when tanks started firing at him, he charges up his atomic breath and lets loose, blowing everything away. So what I'm trying to say here is that he saved his most destructive weapon as the last resort. After the smoke cleared, he was there, looking at the mushroom cloud and roaring loudly, which seemed like a cry of victory. This all hints that Godzilla's got more going on upstairs than just a lizard brain. He's observing, reacting, and even showing a bit of strategy in this chaos. The physiological adaptations that allow Godzilla to function both on land and underwater. So Godzilla is basically a reptile. Yes, no one's denying that, but it is an amphibious reptile. Much like Crocs, he is a semi-aquatic reptile, but Big G is, well, Big G, so he's bound to have some special features. If you haven't guessed how he survives for such long periods underwater, well, allow me to help. The big guy has gills. Now, this is true for the MonsterVerse and Showa-era Godzillas. Christian Pierce, the brain behind Godzilla's design in MonsterVerse, revealed in an interview that designing Godzilla was like trying to make sense of something fundamentally impossible. They had to get creative because, let's face it, a creature that huge and complex isn't exactly textbook material. They ended up looking at marine animals for inspiration since Godzilla's pretty much a full-time underwater resident. Think marine iguanas and big ocean mammals. That's where the gills come into play. Additionally, in Tomoyuki Tanaka's definitive edition Godzilla introduction, it's revealed that even the Showa-era Godzilla had them. Even Gareth Edwards, the director, chimed in about Godzilla's gills in Godzilla: The Art of Destruction. So it is quite possible that Godzilla from -1 also has gills, which is basically the only explanation behind how he's able to breathe underwater and spend 99% of his time there. Yes, animals do use other physical features like skin to absorb oxygen from the surroundings, but we already have a confirmation on gills, so we should stick to them. Godzilla's enhanced cellular regeneration allows him to heal quickly from injuries. Godzilla's got this insane healing factor. He's kinda like the king of regenerating obliterated body parts. Shikishima sets off a mine right in Godzilla's face and boom! There's a huge hole, but in almost no time at all, it's like it never happened. He heals up super fast. Apart from fixing cuts and bruises, Godzilla can literally rebuild himself from just a scrap of flesh. Now that's some next level healing. However, it's not all flawless. After the mine incident, he's left with a scar on his face, and during Operation Wadatsumi, the intense water pressure did a number on him that he couldn't fully fix. But the last few scenes of the movie go on to say that he might just come back by regenerating. Is Godzilla causing radioactive contamination? In the movie, after Godzilla lays waste to Ginza, the authorities have to lock down the area. Why? Well, Godzilla left behind a bunch of radioactive nastiness and chunks of his own mysterious flesh. It's so serious that Noriko, who was caught up in the chaos, ends up with this vein-like pattern on her neck that's eerily similar to Godzilla's dorsal fins. It seems like she got some weird radiation infection from being too close to Godzilla. Now, this leads me to think about Hedorah, this other kaiju who first showed up in 1971's Godzilla vs. Hedorah. This evil kaiju has the ability to switch between air, water, and land forms, but what's really interesting about Hedorah is that he's a product of human pollution. He can't really be beaten because as long as we keep polluting, he'll keep coming back, which is a behavior similar to the precursors from the Pacific Rim universe. They sent the kaiju to Earth because Earth had been polluted, which was the only prerequisite for the precursors to survive on Earth. How Godzilla -1 deals with these themes perfectly sets the stage for Hedorah to step into the spotlight in a sequel. Is Godzilla immortal? Well, the short answer is kinda. After causing chaos in Tokyo and surviving all sorts of attacks, the Japanese folks came up with a last-ditch plan. Kenji Noda, a sharp naval weapons designer, suggested they sink Godzilla using Freon gas to mess with the water's buoyancy. The idea was to drag him down deep and crush him with the pressure. If that flopped, they'd try to pop him to the surface and blow him up with explosive decompression. But Shikishima had his own plan. He figured Godzilla's weak spot was inside his mouth, so he hops into a souped-up Shinden fighter and heads straight for Godzilla's chompers. All while Godzilla's busy with Noda's trap. Shikishima goes full kamikaze and flies its plane right into Godzilla's mouth and bails at the last second. The explosion takes out the top of Godzilla's head, and then all that pent-up atomic energy in Godzilla goes haywire and totally obliterates the rest of him. So long story short, Godzilla met his end with a combination of deep-sea pressure and an explosive courtesy of Shikishima's plane. But a piece of him starts regenerating deep in the ocean, which leaves the door open for more monstrous mayhem. That tiny piece of Godzilla flesh at the bottom of the sea and starting to regenerate is practically leaving the back door unlocked for a sequel to -1. It's gonna take some time for a new Godzilla to grow back from that little scrap, but when he does, you bet he's gonna be looking for some payback. Are we getting a sequel? Takashi Yamazaki, the brains behind the movie, is already buzzing about a sequel, but there's a bit of a scheduling tango to do with Toho and Legendary Pictures, since they're juggling the MonsterVerse movies. Considering how the film smashed records on Rotten Tomatoes for the Godzilla series, chances are pretty good we'll see another installment. Shikishima's story, though, feels pretty wrapped up. The guy's come to terms with his past, dealt with his guilt by taking down Godzilla, and now he's looking at a future with Noriko and their adoptive daughter, Akiko. People are nudging him to make it official with Noriko, and their reunion at the end ties a nice bow on his arc. But hey, if there's a sequel, it's hard to imagine Shikishima sitting it out. He's probably going to be front and center when Godzilla rears his head again. And that was all in this video, but Marvelous Videos is going all guns blazing into the MonsterVerse and beyond, exploring everything there is to explore from the past to the present and the future. You'll find deep dive and other videos on the latest MonsterVerse TV series, the upcoming movie, and much more. So, if you're a Godzilla or Kong fan, I suggest you stick around with us. As always, if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.